This is a WBTV special report.
We need to reset right now. It is 3 o'clock shortly thereafter. We were expecting the memorial service to begin. It's running obviously a few minutes late, and we do have crews there at the Convocation Center there on the campus of Appalachian State University as we wait for today's memorial services to begin. Again, I'm Jamie Bowl alongside Molly Grantham. We appreciate you spending some time with us this afternoon as we honor these lost heroes in our community, Deputy Logan Fox and also Sergeant Chris Ward.
And we have just watched the K-9 officer Logan Fox and the caisson in the procession to go into the Convocation Center. It will now be repeated, and we'll have Sergeant Chris Ward. Here's a little bit about where we got to where we are.
My heart sank. It's just so sad. They didn't deserve this. No one does. I don't know why. Only God knows why.
They're in shock. We're all in shock that this happened.
And it's something that we don't think about every day, but something that could easily happen to anybody who's serving in this line of duty.
People don't always think about that. They don't think of police as being human sometimes and having those families at home.
When something like this happens, it affects all of us.
They put their lives on the line every day, and we just want to show gratitude.
And to have this cloud of such a terrible tragedy hanging over a community like this has been tough. Also, you know, the people that were involved in this were such involved people in our community.
These are heroes that do the job every single day.
This is just super close to home, just a small community, and just wanted to show our support.
We come together as a community in this small town and say we support the officers.
I'm gonna try not to cry, but I probably will. But, you know, it's just, I just wish society could fix these problems so that there wouldn't be so much hurt.
These people who give us so much and do so much for us, and they are so disrespected, and they sacrifice so much for us, and they deserve better. They deserve better.
It's been a long week, hasn't it? Last several days. The funeral for two Watauga County deputies killed in the line of duty will begin soon. Again, thanks for being here. I'm Jamie Bowl.
And I'm Molly Grantham. We are so glad that you want to help honor the community. It's a difficult day, and that service is scheduled to begin. It was originally about 3 o'clock, but as Jamie said, it's obviously running late. There are two caissons and two processions because there are two men, and each will be honored equally as they are brought into the Convocation Center. We have our live crews all around Boone. Here is a live look from Boone and the funeral home right now. We've been watching this, Jamie, as we've led up to this moment when the first procession began. The first one took about 30 minutes, and you see the bus on the bottom part of your screen. Each family, each man will have family and special guests in a bus with the darkened windows sort of follow along with the motorcycles and the hearses.
Deputy Logan Fox has been received at the Convocation Center. The buses and the vehicles here now are for Sergeant Chris Ward and his family. An 8-year veteran of law enforcement, just 36 years old. He went to Watauga High School, married his high school sweetheart, Candace. Two children, ages 19 and 5, Molly and Katie. His dad is Pastor David Ward. His mom, Libby, passed away back in 2010, and he has a sister, Keisha. He enjoyed hunting, fishing, he enjoyed the outdoors. If you've seen some of the pictures with him, you will see him always sort of outside hunting, that sort of thing, which is what you would expect in the North Carolina mountains.
Yeah, most people in Watauga County love hunting and fishing and being outside, and Sergeant Chris Ward was no different from that. The caisson has begun for the second procession. This is going back to get Sergeant Chris Ward. He began with the Beach Mountain Police Department. He started there with his career and in 2013 and then went to Watauga County in 2018, as Jamie said, an 8-year law enforcement veteran. We have our Alex Giles and our Chandler Morgan in Boone right now, and you can see River Street behind the two of you. Welcome to our special report and coverage here for WBTV. It's so serene to see it from here in Charlotte, but you guys are there, and the feel, we're so interested in hearing what the feel is from where you are.
Oh, Molly, the atmosphere is unlike any atmosphere I've ever felt on a college campus. It's important to know we are on the campus of Appalachian State. We are about 75 yards, I'd say, Chandler, from the Convocation Center where these services are going to take place. But all day long, it's just been a special feeling. And there have been people coming from all over the town and across the state to be here. And not just regular citizens, of course, law enforcement as well. And we've had a chance to talk to some of the people out here and have some powerful conversations with some of the people out here. And one of the ones that stuck out to both Chandler and I was talking to a police officer from the campus police, and he looked so young when he approached us. He was 20 years old, and he was here for these services today. And imagine taking all that in as a 20-year-old who just started your career in law enforcement, and he was here with his girlfriend too, Chandler.
And it makes it that much more powerful for him, he said, knowing that he started in August with campus police and then being here today with his girlfriend, both of them, the gravity, it just makes it that much more real. You know that this is a possibility when you sign up for what you're doing. And I think one of the things that stuck out to me too was talking to his girlfriend, and she said it makes her feel so supported that if anything were to ever happen to her boyfriend, Officer Cheney, she knew that if something were to happen, that this would be the response today. And that's the feeling that you get here today. Even though we know why we are here today, everybody is leaning on each other for strength.
Exactly. Jamie, Molly, we've heard you talk about that thin blue line and that tight bond between law enforcement, and it just shows how far that bond goes. Luke Cheney, that was his name, officer from the campus police department. And I had to ask him, I said, you know, after what happened last week, does that make you afraid? And you know what he said? He said, no, it makes me want to do this more. Wow. And it makes me want to be even better at what I do in this profession. A 20-year-old. How about that?
Yeah, young people leading us here today, no question about it. Alex, thank you. Chandler, thank you. We'll be checking in with you throughout the evening. And live pictures back here now of the caisson as it gets ready to bring the body of Sergeant Chris Ward to the Convocation Center. As mentioned, a Watauga County deputy, but a son, a father, a great friend to those who really knew him best.
WBTV's David Winsett has been learning more this week about the two deputies who made the ultimate sacrifice.
I certainly have, and I've got to tell you, right now what you're seeing is that second procession leaving. This is the family of Chris Ward, and you can see the hearse following behind him. And Sergeant Ward, he was like a lot of folks from this area, just loves the outdoors because it is such a beautiful place, and he really enjoyed the beauty that is all around here.
Sergeant Christopher David Ward's story began in the Sugar Grove community of Watauga County, where he was born in 1984. He was a member of the Green Valley Baptist Church there. It's a place of great natural beauty, and he loved being in it, hunting, fishing, enjoying the outdoors. He graduated from Watauga High School. His law enforcement career began with the Beach Mountain Police Department in 2013 and then the Watauga County Sheriff's Office in 2018.
Deputy Ward has family and kids.
Described as a loving husband and father, Sergeant Ward leaves behind wife Candace and daughters Molly and Katie. A private funeral service for Sergeant Ward will be held on Friday in Sugar Grove.
Our David Wisnett there reporting. David, of course, an alum of Appalachian State and used to, as kind of Alex was alluding to, this is not the typical scene in Boone, right, where we normally see lots of action going on, certainly the end of a school year, that sort of thing. David's still with us here live, and yeah, you're familiar, awfully familiar with Boone, and this is just not a picture we normally, you know, come to think of when we think of the community. We think of celebration and football games and fun, and it's just much different today.
It really is, Jamie. You were talking about this being such a happy place for the most part. In the Convocation Center, that's where you go to watch the Mountaineers play basketball. That's where you go to see students receiving their diplomas. In fact, that's going to happen starting tomorrow and over the next few days. And again, we're talking about these two deputies. Logan Fox, not born here, but very familiar with this area because of all the trips his family used to make to a vacation home in Beach Mountain. He became a part of a community when he did finally move to Watauga County as a teen.
Born in February of 1996 in Florida, Logan Shane Fox learned to love the North Carolina mountains through trips to his family vacation home in Beach Mountain. The family made the move just in time for Logan to attend Watauga High School. Friends said it was his natural instinct to make people laugh. He developed relationships in school that lasted the rest of his life, including finding the love of his life, Annalise Moody. Logan was just 14 when he was awarded the Community Service and Impact Award in Beach Mountain. He continued to grow through, quote, a life of self-sacrifice when he became a sheriff's deputy. Logan graduated from basic law enforcement training at Wilkes Community College as valedictorian with the highest GPA in the class. He was recruited on graduation day in 2017 in Ashe County. That's where he teamed up with K-9 Raven. Logan moved to the Watauga County Sheriff's Office in 2019 with K-9 partner Raven still at his side. Throughout his short but impactful career, Logan loved serving as a law enforcement officer, but even deeper was his love for his brothers and sisters who served side by side with him until the end.
I spoke to David Jackson, who's the head of the Chamber of Commerce for the Boone area, and he said because of these two deputies, because of the Ligons, the folks who passed away in this incident, he said that this truly has touched nearly everyone in Watauga County because through those people there are so many relationships and so many connections. In fact, the owner of the funeral home came out just a few minutes ago right before the second procession left, and he said he's never seen an event that did touch so many families like this has, and he says that they just really covet prayers from everyone who's watching this and kind of taking part in this today.
We are thinking of all of them, certainly, and we appreciate their help in helping us broadcast this today and tell these stories that are so important to the community. David Wisnett live in Boone. David, we'll talk to you a bit later on. Thank you.
And Jamie, obviously all of this centering around the Convocation Center there at App State. The funerals were expected to begin at 3 o'clock, this public service. Both men are going to have private services later on in the week. But today was supposed to begin at 3. We are running late. Obviously, the two caissons take a long time to get through, and you see the motorcycle, the motorcade, and you see the caisson with Sergeant Chris Ward here preparing as we are in the middle of the second procession. How did we get here? I mean, many of you were watching last Wednesday, April 28th, and you know about the 12-hour standoff. It has led to what is today a very emotional day in Boone and really, let's just say, across our whole area. Law enforcement from across North Carolina are there in Boone right now to honor the Watauga County deputies. But let's go back a little bit and make sure we all are aware of how we got to where we are.
Well, I actually saw all the cop cars going crazy throughout the day, and then I kind of checked in with my partner, and we kind of looked at the news, and we're like, oh, wow, this is happening. There's a crazy situation going on.
Neighbor Marco Hernandez is correct. What happened April 28th on the eastern side of Boone was a highly unusual, dangerous, chilling, and unexpected situation. Watauga County Sheriff Len Hageman says when deputies showed up to check on 61-year-old Michelle Logan and her husband, 58-year-old George, they were ambushed.
Well, I was in front of the house, and it was just a hail of gunfire.
An armed man was inside the home, shooting at the deputies who walked in.
I didn't know how anybody could be in that amount of gunfire and not get hit.
2 deputies were hit. 36-year-old Sergeant Chris Ward and 25-year-old K-9 officer Logan Fox. The sheriff says another man with them, a Boone police officer, was able to pull Sergeant Ward outside as shots popped off. That officer was hit in his ballistic helmet. The next day, you could see bullet markings.
Prevented a tragic situation from being even worse.
Sergeant Ward was emergency flown to Johnson City, Tennessee for medical treatment. It was there he died. This 8-year veteran with the department wasn't only a deputy, he was a husband who'd married his high school sweetheart, and he was also a father. His death leaves 2 children, ages 19 and 5, without a dad.
I think your husband's going to come home, or your wife is going to come home, and it doesn't happen sometimes.
Meantime, an injured Deputy Fox remained inside the home for 12 hours. SWAT was finally able to move in and found him dead, as well as the Ligons and the alleged shooter, who the sheriff named as Isaac Barnes, Michelle Ligon's son. Deputy Fox leaves behind a fiancé. He'd been with Watauga County Sheriff's Office for 2 years. The Ligons leave behind family, friends, and a community who loved them.
They didn't deserve this. No one does. I don't know why. Only God knows why.
As for the 32-year-old shooter, Sheriff Hageman says they'd had calls about him the week leading up to the mass killing. He says there was family concern that he might do something.
I'm convinced that the attitude of the suspect was such that he was planning this, not particularly the officers, but possibly the public in general.
Even scarier, the sheriff adds, is that after the killings, deputies realized Barnes had a, quote, cache of weapons. Over a week later, no one knows exact details of what went on inside this home. The scene was left broken, glass all over the front stoop, but details from the 12-hour standoff will most likely remain a mystery. What's clear is the human loss. 2 deputies.
They show their love for us and the community by laying their lives down each day.
And a beloved couple.
I just could not believe it because she was a tender person. She was not a person that would engage in disputes and arguments.
As news spread in the hours after, law enforcement agencies across North Carolina started to respond.
Boone is, you know, two and a half hours away, but every officer who's worked patrol has gone on a check the welfare call.
These out-of-nowhere killings became an instant real-life reminder about the strength of the thin blue line and the fragility of life. To show support, people showed up. As the bodies of Sergeant Chris Ward and Deputy Logan Fox were taken from a hospital in Winston-Salem, 90 miles west down Highway 421 into the heart of Boone, people parked their cars, got out, held American flags in whipping wind, and put their hands to their heads in a salute.
I'm retired, but on my worst day on the job, nobody ever shot at me. And these are heroes that do the job every single day.
Boone and Blowing Rock firefighters came out too, draping a large American flag over the highway.
I think anyone who goes into the law enforcement, they just sacrifice unconditionally.
As the procession approached downtown King Street, crowds lined the curb. Many faces, but stunned silence. Nearby at the Watauga County Sheriff's Office, a memorial grows still with signs, flowers, posters, and strangers. Kevin Buchanan works for emergency services an hour outside of Boone. He came because he said he felt called to do so.
Don't take for granted the people who serve, you know, your community. Don't take for granted the people who go out every night and don't, you know, they don't know if they're going to come home.
Of all the tough twists and turns through the past 8 days, one image seems to rise to the top. This. The night after the standoff, after 12 hours of chaos, after losing 2 friends and 2 members of the community, deputies standing near each other outside of the Watauga County Sheriff's Office, grabbing each other's backs, holding each other up, with their heads down, praying. And a lot of that imagery we will see today as well. These are live pictures of family and friends walking into the Convocation Center, the Holmes Convocation Center there on the App State campus. It will be a very crowded ceremony. Everybody will be required to wear a mask if you're inside. It is live streaming. And you see there, Jamie, right there, that's exactly what we were going to reference, is that flag, the thin blue line flag, the law enforcement flag. We see a lot of American flags on days like this in the past week over the overpass. You just saw them in the story in the past video from last Friday. And today you'll also see the flags that represent "We support you, law enforcement, and we are here for you," holding you up.
You can see many people have come out of their homes and offices today to line the sidewalks of Boone to pay their respects today. And you can see the caisson now getting ready to move. This will be the second trip that the caisson unit has made down the street here to the Convocation Center. Earlier, about a half hour or so ago, we saw Deputy Fox being brought to the Convocation Center. This is Sergeant Chris Ward now taking the road down to the Convocation Center for today's memorial service, family leading ahead of him. Again, it's always an emotional picture, and a picture we're watching for you very closely here today. This unit has been called into action, sometimes, you know, on short notice, 24 hours, and they're going to be there doing the job that they've been trained to do, and they've been doing it here today. As you can again see the horses and the caisson moving. We did it for, I think, Deputy Fox. I think maybe we should do it for Sergeant Ward as well, and just watch for a moment and pay our respects. The picture there freezing a bit on us, as you can see, but you will notice, as we've been mentioning several times already here this afternoon, just how quiet it is in Boone this afternoon as we are all watching these images, powerful images, as a community comes together to stop to honor these two fallen officers, Deputy Logan Fox and Sergeant Chris Ward, as the riderless horse trails the caisson down the street.
As you said, this is Sergeant Chris Ward's body going into the Convocation Center. He was married. His wife, Candace, obviously here, and had two children, two girls, Molly and Katie. One was 19, one is 5. And I think, Jamie, when you think about a 5-year-old daughter, presumably here for the moment and the day, but you wonder later in life, what is your earliest childhood memory?
Right.
Will his daughter even understand or remember any of this, right? The horse or the hearse or the moment and the people and the flags, the quiet. You don't know. You don't know what 5-year-olds really remember, and each child is certainly different. But a 19-year-old, this will impact in very deep ways, to now lose her dad. And a 5-year-old, it will impact in very different, deep ways.
So many things Daddy won't be there for, right? Going forward, you can't help but stop and think, about those moments of weddings and graduations and so forth. And that's just some of what's been taken away from this family because Sergeant Chris Ward answered the call for a welfare check to go see what was going on with somebody in his community in harm's way. He needed to go find out, and that's what he did. We saw, the examples in the piece that you just had on a moment ago, Molly, of so many people saying you just don't know every night when you go out, will they come back?
Right.
And in this case, 2 did not. And that's why this community is in pain here today. That's why we're watching these images here unfolding in Boone this afternoon. And just watching that image right there of the caisson and the carriage rolling through behind the early budding trees of spring. It is something to behold, the American flags flying. And again, just the quiet of this day. Befitting these two heroes.
The silence can be beautiful, isn't it? And that is a very powerful image, but also a beautiful and historic one in many ways. This moment today, coming off of last Wednesday, I think so many people in the community in Boone have been telling us all week, obviously this will always strike deep when someone in the line of duty is killed. When you are going to have a welfare check on a pretty Wednesday morning, there is no expectation. It's not where the training kicks in that you're going into a dangerous situation. You're not expecting SWAT. You don't think it's something where there's someone holed up with a cache of weapons, as Sheriff Len Hageman later described once they got inside and saw what Isaac Barnes, the man they said who killed them, had. And that's why the canine Raven was in the car.
Right.
It was a welfare check. There was zero expectation that it would become so dangerous and so chilling. And that is why the sheriff, and that is also why Governor Roy Cooper said last week, it was an ambush. You walked up to the front step to knock on the door and bam, all of a sudden there's just shots popping off in all directions.
And now here we are 8 days later, walking up the steps, scores of people into the Convocation Center for this memorial service that will presumably be getting underway here in the next few minutes. But it is important to remember, and we've alluded to it a couple of times, that Sergeant Ward and Deputy Fox were not the only people who died that day last week. Yes, they were killed as they were checking in on the married couple from Boone. The couple hadn't shown up for work. They were George and Michelle Logan. They are also the victims of this tragic chain of events that unfolded. Those who knew them best tell us they were simply just good people. And we learned the community loved them, and they deeply loved each other.
They met in Boone. Both of them lived there, and they fell in love there. They were married in the area, and they were just as much in love and just enjoyed each other last weekend as they did as newlyweds.
You could tell that they enjoyed being with each other, and there was that special bond.
Family members tell us George and Michelle Logan were soulmates, married in 2006. Family says they were devoted to each other, bringing a light to people they knew.
George was a joy, just bubbling over with joy and happiness, and he was that way with everybody he met. Michelle also had that same spirit about her. They never met a stranger. They spread kindness to anyone everywhere they went, and I hope to be like them.
George worked as branch manager for Terminex in Boone, Michelle worked for Explore Boone, the local tourism bureau.
She was a very laid-back person and a very happy-go-lucky person.
People loved her. I mean, that's the one thing. We've been bombarded with messages from her colleagues and friends.
Friends say they couldn't imagine the Ligons ever at odds with others. But on Wednesday, April 28th, authorities say George and Michelle were murdered by Michelle's son, 32-year-old Isaac Barnes, in their home. Family says he struggled with mental health.
My heart sank. It's just so sad. They didn't deserve this. No one does. I don't know why. Only God knows why.
Even with their lives ending, George and Michelle's memory will live on.
That gives us great hope to be reunited with him someday. We're thankful for that.
Leaning on their faith, another family in Watauga County tonight. Just last night, we did learn some of the details on the funeral arrangements. A memorial service will be held for both George and Michelle this Saturday, 2 p.m. at Boone United Methodist Church. That service will be streamed online. According to Jenkins Funeral Home, flowers will be accepted. Contributions, though, can also be made to the National Alliance on Mental Illness, North Carolina, or the charity of your choice.
It also must be noted, the National Association of Mental Illness North Carolina, that is a powerful thing to say to give your money to. It was Michelle's son who the sheriff has said was responsible for this mass killing last Wednesday, and George's stepson. We do want to check in with Chandler and Alex. They are just outside the Holmes Convocation Center at App State, where all of this is happening today. You guys, we've been watching the processions go in. As you turn around, you have the best vantage point around. Where do things stand now?
Molly's still just waiting for actual services to begin. Obviously, as you guys noted, there are 2 processions that need to take place, so that obviously takes a little bit more time. And so we're just waiting for the gradual process of the second procession to make its way down towards the Convocation Center here on the campus of Appalachian State. And then we presume that the services will begin after that. All afternoon long, we've seen a number of people out here. It's kind of a lot of hustle and bustle, wouldn't you say, Chandler, earlier today, with law enforcement from across the state and people from around the community coming into town to be here for this moment. But it seems like about an hour or so ago, everything just kind of slowed down. Everything got quiet. Remember, this is a college campus.
Right.
The people who are playing tennis nearby stopped playing tennis. There's nobody working out anymore. It's everybody just sitting and waiting and watching, Chandler.
It's magnetic, the energy that draws you in when you're watching everything happen behind us just moments ago. I think really just to see, as you said, the amount of people that came from all over. We saw, closer to us, Caldwell County, and then we saw Graham County. So that really kind of shows you just how many people wanted to be here today. We also spoke with some retired officers who traveled from New York as well. Definitely a powerful experience to know that they take their time and they go and they make sure that they go to these places so that people can know they have their support, whether you are in law enforcement or you just are on the campus and wanting to take a moment to reflect and make sure that people know that you are appreciative of what's happening here today.
Absolutely. And Chandler, I believe the producers are telling us that the caisson is making its way down towards the Convocation Center. Jamie, Molly, if you guys are watching from in studio, is that what's happening now?
It is.
Yeah, the casket has now made its way into the Convocation Center itself. This camera will probably cut out on us here in just a second here, and we'll have to go back to a wide shot. But yeah, the body of Sergeant Chris Ward now arriving at the Convocation Center. And there's the screen I was mentioning, Rest Easy Brothers. We'll take it from here. That gets to what you guys were talking about. Everyone rallies. The law enforcement community rallies, Alex and Chandler, and that's obviously what we're seeing here today.
I think the brotherhood is so strong, too, when you talk about so many people who have come out to show their support. We had a moment today where we were able to talk to a campus police officer. This obviously hits very close to home for him because he is here every day, and being able to see all of the support come into the place that he dedicates his life to every day. One of the interesting things is, this is obviously a supportive moment, and people are bringing their families here. We've talked to families who are making this, of course, a teachable moment for their kids on how important it is to have a great relationship with your law enforcement.